You're standing in line at the grocery store. Someone cuts in front of you, and something strange happens. You feel the irritation rise. You watch your mind start to spin a story about respect and fairness. But there's this gap, like you're watching it happen instead of being consumed by it. And for a split second you think, wait, why don't I care as much as I used to? Most people think enlightenment is some mystical state where you levitate above your problems, glowing with cosmic energy. The Buddha described it very differently. In the Pali Canon, he called it Nibbana, the extinguishing of what? Of the craving, the aversion, and the confusion that keep you burning. Quick note, if you came for 7 hacks to be enlightened by Friday, you're in the wrong place. This is about recognizing what's already shifting. Today we're exploring 7 strange signs that these fires are weakening, and I guarantee most of them will surprise you. One thing before we get into this, I'm not enlightened. I still get annoyed when my Wi-Fi drops. I still want things I don't need. I still scroll at 2 a.m. like everyone else. What Buddhism taught me. You don't have to be fully enlightened to notice when things start shifting, when the fires that keep you suffering start to cool down. In our previous video on what is enlightenment, we talked about Buddha's discovery under the Bodhi tree. Today we're getting personal. We're looking at early signs that the same process might be happening in you. The Pali Canon describes 3 unwholesome roots, the fundamental causes of suffering: lobha, greed, craving, that burning hunger for more; dosa, hatred, aversion, the fire that pushes away what you don't want; moha, delusion, ignorance, the smoke that keeps you from seeing clearly. These 3 roots are the same forces that, in many teachings, are described like fires, because they burn you from the inside. Not abstract concepts. These are the actual fuels hijacking your day, right now. And to be clear, this isn't a diagnosis of awakening. It's a way to notice what's loosening. The path isn't about becoming holy. It's about what stops hijacking your day. The signs we're about to explore? They're evidence these fires are losing power. I'm not diagnosing anyone. I'm describing patterns the Buddha pointed at, so you can observe your own mind and verify for yourself. Not extinguished, not gone, cooling. When these Buddhist fires start cooling, it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like something's wrong. You've spent your whole life being told that wanting things is good, that ambition drives you, that anger protects you, that certainty keeps you safe. So when those feelings start fading, your first thought is, am I broken? The Buddha described Nirvana, Nibbana in Pali, as removing the fuel that keeps you burning. Some early Western readings framed it as annihilation, but that misses the point. The fires aren't you. They're what's been burning you your entire life. Our culture trains us to always want more success, more attention, more validation. When that hunger starts fading, we panic. Your ego doesn't die. It loses the microphone. As we covered in our video about Nagarjuna and the middle way, liberation comes from releasing the grasping itself. But discernment matters. Buddhist dispassion, the fire's cooling. You can still engage with life. You're no longer desperately needing it to be different. Clinical depression, everything loses color, even sunsets, laughter, real connection. This is neurochemical, not awakening. Burnout, you're exhausted, you need rest. The difference? With dispassion, you can still engage and enjoy life. You're simply not desperate for it to complete you. If everything feels gray and empty for weeks, not just worldly achievements, but sunsets, laughter, real connection, that's a signal. Talk to someone you trust, or a professional. Don't meditate your way through untreated depression. There's a classic image in the tradition. Chasing awakening is like chasing your shadow by running toward it. Every time you chase enlightenment as an achievement, you reinforce the very self-sense that blocks it. The signs we're about to explore don't feel like spiritual progress. It feels like everything you thought mattered just doesn't anymore. This one scares people because it looks like depression. It isn't. Remember when getting a promotion made you excited for weeks? Now it's another thing that happened. Your friend gets their dream car, posts it everywhere, and you feel nothing. No envy, no excitement, no urge to compete. You scroll through everyone's highlight reel and it looks exhausting. All that performing, all that needing to be seen. Material things that used to spark excitement now look like stuff that needs maintenance. The Buddha taught viraga, dispassion, fading of craving, that greedy grasping loses its power. Prince Siddhartha lived in a palace, surrounded by luxury designed to keep him impressed, to keep him wanting. Then he saw through it. The Buddha would say you're seeing things as they actually are, impermanent, anicca, unsatisfying, dukkha, not self, anatta. You can still enjoy ice cream, you're just not fantasizing about it at 3 p.m. You don't stop being human. You stop being hypnotized by shiny objects. What to watch for? Is this dispassion or depression? Dispassion is selective. Worldly achievements stop impressing you. You can still be moved by a sunset, touched by kindness. Depression makes everything gray, global emotional numbing, cynicism, the dark mirror of dispassion, dismissing everything as meaningless rather than seeing clearly. Here's how you'll know. Can you still engage with life without needing life to be different? Like realizing the trailer was better than the movie. You get it, and it's fine. Nothing wrong with it. It doesn't fill the hole you thought it would. And instead of feeling disappointed, you feel relieved because you finally stopped chasing that particular illusion. It's not that goals are wrong, it's that your worth stops depending on them. Try this right now. Notice what you almost buy, post, or brag about. Then watch the urge fade. See how long the wanting actually lasts when you don't feed it. And to be clear, these are signs of direction, not a finish line. In Buddhism, progress is measured by what has less grip on you. That greedy fire is cooling. That's the grocery store gap getting wider. This one will make your family think you got soft when you actually got free. Someone says something you know is wrong. Your old self would have spent an hour explaining, correcting, proving. Now, you listen. You might even say, "Huh, interesting." And you let it go. The need to correct them, to be acknowledged as right, to win, it's simply not there anymore. You're at a family dinner. Uncle brings up politics. Old you would have fought for 2 hours. New you pass the potatoes. I caught myself mid-argument once and realized the topic didn't matter anymore. I was defending my identity as someone who's right. The moment I saw that, the whole thing collapsed. Online debates that used to fire you up now look like people screaming into voids, protecting their sense of self. You still have opinions. You can still speak up when it matters. The need to be acknowledged as right, that desperate hunger for validation, it's fading. The fire of hatred, dosa, is cooling. As we explored in the 14 questions Buddha refused to answer, he prioritized liberation over being right. The concept of right speech, samavaka, means speaking only what is true, helpful, and timely. Sometimes saying nothing is the most right speech of all. In one Dhammapada verse, the Buddha says it plainly: hatred is never ended by hatred, only by non-hatred. You can't win an argument into peace. When there's less solid self to defend, arguments lose their fuel, As we covered in Jung and Buddha's greatest debate, the separate self is maintained through opposition. Do this once today. Before replying to something that triggers you, feel your chest. If it's tight, wait 10 breaths. See if you still need to speak. So here's the real question. Is this ego dissolution or avoidance behavior? Cooling aversion. You genuinely don't feel triggered. No physical tension. No suppression needed. Avoidance. You do feel triggered. You're controlling it. Smiling while internally screaming. The anger is still there. You're wearing a mask. Apathy. You don't care because you've given up. The difference shows up here. Can you disagree peacefully and maintain boundaries when needed? Or are you avoiding conflict because confrontation feels dangerous? There's a Zen story. Someone asked a master, "How do you remain so calm when people attack your teachings?" He replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, whose gift is it?" Your need to win arguments is you accepting gifts nobody's actually giving. The person arguing with you is arguing with their image of you, their projection, not the real you. The fire of aversion is cooling. This one is a superpower in a world addicted to hot takes. I don't know. 3 words that used to feel like failure. Now they feel like relief. Someone asks your opinion on something complex, geopolitics, cryptocurrency, whether their friend should leave their partner. Old you had answers. Confident, backed by articles you skimmed, opinions you adopted. New you? I don't know enough to have a strong opinion. You mean it, and it feels freeing. Conspiracy theorists know everything. They have explanations for every event, certainty about every mystery. As practice deepens, certainty loosens. I need to figure this out used to create anxiety, pressure, urgency. Now uncertainty feels spacious, open. You've stopped filling silence with your own voice to seem knowledgeable. The mind stops pretending it's certain. In the Kalama Sutta, the Buddha tells people not to believe him because he said it. Test it yourself. Observe. Verify. The concept of beginner's mind from Zen master Shunryu Suzuki. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. Western culture treats uncertainty like weakness. You're supposed to have 5-year plans, strong opinions, confident expertise. Practice this. Say "I don't know" once today without apologizing, without qualifying, without explaining why you don't know. Let it stand. So how do you know which one this is? Is this wisdom or intellectual laziness? Weakening delusion. You've genuinely examined something and recognized the limits of your knowledge. You're comfortable in the unknowing. Intellectual laziness. You haven't bothered to look into something. It's avoidance. Performative uncertainty. I don't know as a pose, as a way to seem humble while avoiding intellectual work. The Buddha encouraged investigation, Dhamma Vicaya, one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. This sign isn't about not thinking. It's about holding your conclusions lightly. There's a famous Zen koan. Not knowing is most intimate. When you know something, you stop really looking at it. You've categorized it, filed it away, stopped being curious. When you genuinely don't know, everything becomes alive again. Fresh. Immediate. If that line irritated you, good. That's the mind clinging to certainty. The fire of delusion is weakening. This one feels like losing your identity until you feel the relief. You used to think you were unique, destined for something great, chosen somehow. Now you're another person breathing on this planet. and somehow that feels better. Social media literally monetizes uniqueness. Everyone's a brand. Everyone's story is inspiring. Everyone's special. This is where the path gets weird. Less craving, less fighting, and then more connection. You used to curate your life to look special, the right filter, the right caption, the right angle. Now you're living it, without the performance, without needing it to look a certain way. That friend who constantly talks about their journey, their transformation, their purpose, suddenly sounds exhausting. You've stopped thinking, this always happens to me, and started noticing, it happens to everyone. Everyone gets hurt, everyone gets scared, everyone struggles with the same basic human experiences. You're not uniquely damaged, you're not uniquely blessed. You're a person, like billions of other persons. The weakening of mana, the conceit of I am, one of the 10 fetters. As we explored in what happens when you don't exist, losing the sense of being special is liberation. Even after all other fetters break, mana is one of the last to go before full awakening. The ego needs to feel special to exist. I need to be different from you for I to exist at all. When you see yourself as a wave in an ocean instead of a separate drop, loneliness transforms into connection. Notice, when something good happens, do you need to tell someone immediately? Post it? Get witnesses? Or can you be with it? Let it be what it is. You're not becoming nobody. You're becoming everybody. Here's a small experiment. Catch "this always happens to me." Replace it with "this is human." Watch how that shift feels. What actually separates these? Is this healthy ego dissolution or low self-worth? Weakening mana. You recognize you're not more or less important than anyone else. Genuine equality. You can celebrate others' success without feeling diminished. Low self-esteem. You feel worthless, less than. There's a negative charge to it. Spiritual bypassing. You claim I'm not special, while secretly hoping people will tell you how special you are. It's inverted ego. Nihilism. Nothing matters because life has no meaning. This is despair, not liberation. And if you're being honest with yourself, can you hear someone else being praised without feeling diminished? And can you be praised without needing it? The texts keep repeating the same shock. Things aren't you in the way you think. You're not special, and neither is anyone else. And that's where real connection lives. The conceit is weakening. This one annoys capitalism. The way light hits your coffee cup, the sound of rain on the window, your dog's ridiculous face. And you're grinning like an idiot, for absolutely no reason. You used to need a vacation, a purchase, an achievement to feel good. Now a perfect parking spot makes your whole morning. A stranger smiles at you and you're carrying that warmth for an hour. Children have this naturally. They lose their minds over a cardboard box. A stick becomes a sword. Our economy literally depends on you not finding joy in free things. You've started noticing textures, temperatures, small beauties you walked past for years. The Buddha taught sukha, the joy that comes from liberation, not from acquiring things. In one Dhammapada verse, "Happy indeed we live, we who possess nothing." Let me be precise about what this actually indicates. Early mindfulness, sati, developing, a factor of enlightenment, yes. The first mile of a marathon, not the finish line. You can have strong mindfulness and still have strong craving, aversion, delusion in other areas. In the gradual training, mindfulness develops before insight, a beautiful sign of practice maturing. Early in the path, not late. Be careful not to mistake contentment with simple things for the extinguishing of the fires. You can be present and still be burning. Presence changes what you notice, not the laws of physics. What becomes visible to you in this moment? Practice this. Pick one daily activity this week and do it like it's the most important thing in the world. Brushing your teeth, walking to your car, give it your full attention, not as a means to an end, as the thing itself. One trap here, spiritual bypass joy. I'm happy with simple things, so I'm awakened, using contentment as proof of progress rather than experiencing it directly. This moment, right now, the weight of your body, the sound in your ears, the light in this room. This has always been available. The Buddha didn't discover something new under the Bodhi tree. He woke up to what was already here. Not eternity, presence, not magic, direct seeing. You're not gaining something mystical. You're losing the filter that made you miss what was always right in front of you. Mindfulness is maturing. This one is the crack that turns your mind into a movie screen. You're spiraling about something, catastrophizing about the future, replaying the past, building a whole narrative about how wrong things are. And suddenly you notice, oh, I'm spiraling. That noticing creates space, like you stepped outside yourself for a split second. You're having a bad day and you literally hear yourself think, I'm having a bad day. And you wonder, wait, who's listening? Used to be completely lost in thought streams, swept away by every mental current. Now there's this strange gap between thinking and awareness of thinking. It happens randomly. During arguments, you hear yourself getting defensive and you think, interesting, defensiveness is happening. The beginning of Vipassana, insight, the core practice Buddha taught. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha teaches contemplating thoughts as thoughts, not getting caught in thoughts, watching them arise, exist, pass away. The Buddha used this image. A gatekeeper who watches what enters and leaves the city without identifying with travelers. The gatekeeper doesn't say, I am these travelers. The gatekeeper watches them pass through. Early insight into anatta, not self. If you can watch your thoughts, you can't be your thoughts. In the Bahiya instruction, the Buddha points to direct seeing, just the experience itself, without adding an owner on top. The fact you can observe thoughts means you're not identical to them. In What Happens When You Don't Exist, we explored how this watching gradually dissolves the sense of a solid self. Practice this. When a strong emotion arises, silently label it. Here's anger. Here's anxiety. Watch how naming creates distance. Let's be careful here. Is this healthy metacognition or dissociation? Healthy insight. You observe thoughts while being functionally present. You can respond to life appropriately. The watching feels spacious, peaceful. Dissociation. You feel disconnected, floaty, unreal, protective numbing. You can't fully engage with life. Depersonalization. The world feels unreal, dreamlike in an uncomfortable way. This is a disorder. If you're unsure, treat it gently. Practice should make you more present, not less. Here's what tells you. Does this watching help you respond more skillfully to life? Or does it make you less able to function? Buddhist insight increases clarity and capability. Dissociation decreases both. This is not the final stage. Early insight practice. You're noticing the gap between awareness and thought content. That's significant. Many more layers remain. The moment this clicked for me personally, I was stuck in traffic, getting increasingly furious, creating a whole narrative about disrespectful drivers. And then I heard myself, like an echo, creating a whole narrative about disrespectful drivers. And I started laughing, because who was narrating the narration? If I'm the thinker, who's listening to the thoughts? People train for years to stabilize this kind of awareness, and sometimes it appears in the least spiritual place imaginable, sitting in traffic, watching your road rage like it's a movie. Now the gap isn't in the grocery line, it's in your mind. Insight is beginning. This one is the ego's last magic trick. Right now, as you're mentally checking off these signs, you're probably thinking, yeah, I still get angry sometimes, so I can't be experiencing any of this. And that thought, that doubt, that's actually the final sign. You're reading a list about awakening and your immediate response is, I'm not awakened enough to relate to this. Or, sure, I experience these things sometimes. Real practitioners experience them all the time. Or, yeah, I also still scroll mindlessly, so obviously the fires aren't cooling. That voice, that comparing, that disqualifying yourself, that's the conceit of I am, trying to survive by inverting itself. Real awakening often looks like a regular person who doesn't need to prove anything. The people who talk most about their spiritual progress are often most attached to the identity of being spiritual. You're not sure if these fires are cooling. Good. That means you're not turning it into ego fuel. Mana, the conceit, one of the last fetters to break. In the Alagadupama Sutta, the Buddha warns against spiritual materialism, using teachings to build a better self-image, collecting insights like trophies. Even the thought I am enlightened creates the very self-sense that prevents enlightenment. Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Nothing dramatic changes on the outside. You still do ordinary things. The difference is internal and subtle, and not something you parade around. True humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking about yourself less. As we covered in Buddha's warning, the 4 people who will ruin your life, spiritual ego is one of the sneakiest obstacles. It wears the costume of humility while still performing, still comparing, still needing to be seen as evolved. Notice, when you want to tell someone about your meditation practice, your insights, your growth, pause. That desire to be seen as spiritual is mana in disguise. The fires aren't out. They're simply not running the whole show anymore. Practice this. If you feel the urge to prove progress, smile. Don't feed it. Watch the urge itself. See how it feels to let it pass without action. The final test, is this genuine humility or false modesty? Real humility, you genuinely don't think about whether you're spiritual or not. The question barely arises. No charge to it. False modesty. You claim, I'm not spiritual, while secretly hoping people will disagree. You downplay growth to get validation. Still ego, wearing different clothes. Unhealthy self-doubt. You invalidate all positive changes because you don't feel worthy. This isn't humility. It's a wound. Can you acknowledge growth without making it your identity? And can you acknowledge remaining work without self-flagellation? There's a Zen story about a monk who spent 20 years meditating in a cave, finally achieved a profound breakthrough, came down from the mountain radiating insight, got to the village marketplace, someone accidentally bumped into him, and he got furious. And then he started laughing, because he realized the fires don't extinguish by pretending they're gone. They cool when you stop fighting them, stop feeding them, stop identifying with them. You're not trying to become a perfect being who never gets angry. You're learning to hold anger lightly when it arises, to not believe its story, to watch it burn itself out, including your story about being someone who's enlightening. Maybe you recognize yourself in 3 of these signs. 4, all 7. Now what? You don't need to change your external life. You need to change how you relate to it. The CEO meditating at dawn and someone with nothing sitting by the river have equal access to presence. Your grocery store moment of watching thoughts is as valid as a monk's cave retreat. Don't create a new identity around being someone whose fires are cooling. That's ego with spiritual clothing. Use these signs as mirrors, not achievements to collect. Let me be clear about what this means in Buddhist terms. These 7 signs indicate the weakening of the 3 unwholesome roots, lobha, dosa, moha. They do not indicate full Nibbana, complete extinguishing, or that you're close in any measurable timeline. In the 10 fetters framework, you might be loosening some lower fetters, views, doubt. Higher fetters, conceit, restlessness, ignorance, may remain strong. This is early to middle path territory, not end game. Different traditions map the terrain differently, but they agree on this. It's gradual. We covered the Zen framework in The 10 Stages of Zen Enlightenment. Theravada uses the 4 paths. Tibetan traditions use the bhumis. All say the same thing: gradual training, gradual progress, gradual awakening. You're not going to wake up one morning with credits rolling. Instead, you'll keep having these small moments of clarity, these signs of fires weakening. And slowly, the person who was desperately seeking something isn't there as much anymore. Not because you killed them, because you stopped feeding them. In one Dhammapada verse, the Buddha compares the gradual path to a smith removing dross from silver, little by little, moment by moment. This is what that looks like. Remember that grocery store line from the beginning? You watching your irritation instead of being consumed by it? That moment wasn't full Nibbana, the complete extinguishing. It was evidence that the fire of aversion was cooling, even a little. And in the gradual training the Buddha taught, even partial cooling changes everything. The 7 signs we covered. First, nothing impresses you anymore, lobha weakening. Second, you've stopped arguing to be right, dosa cooling. Third, you're okay with not knowing, moha loosening. Fourth, you feel less special, mana dissolving. Fifth, small things make you happy, sati maturing. Sixth, you watch your thoughts, Vipassana developing. Seventh, you think, nah, not me, genuine humility. The Buddha compared the gradual path to an ocean that deepens slowly. Just as the ocean slopes gradually, so too in this teaching there is a gradual training. You're not enlightened. Neither am I. If you're experiencing these signs, the fires are weakening, not extinguished, not gone, cooling. And that cooling, that's the path itself. The honest reality, you'll still get angry sometimes. You'll still want things. You'll still get confused. Maybe the anger doesn't last as long. The wanting doesn't control you as much. The confusion doesn't spiral as deeply. That's not failure. That's the fires cooling. The Buddha taught, few among humans reach the far shore. Most merely run up and down on this shore. These 7 signs, they're evidence you've stepped into the water. You're not on the far shore yet. You're not running up and down anymore either. The fires are cooling. Keep watching. Keep practicing. Keep living. And don't make a big deal about it. Which of these signs resonated most with you? Tell me the number and what it looked like in your real life. 1 sentence. And if you're thinking, I shouldn't comment because it'll sound like spiritual bragging, well, that's sign number 7, friend. If this video helped you recognize your own signs differently, hit that like button and subscribe to Buddha's wisdom for more insights that bridge ancient teachings with your actual life. That tightness in your chest when things don't go your way, That boredom with things that used to excite you. That strange peace when you stop fighting reality. Those aren't problems to fix. They're invitations to wake up. See you next time. And until then, watch the fire, not the story.